Okay, the weird tuba noises are still going on, but we're gonna work with it. So you weren't in class on Friday, and I wanted to go over this. I thought a video might be helpful. We did this a little bit earlier in the week, but identifying triads in music and figuring out their root and quality and inversion. So this is the handout from class on Friday. And what you've got in front of you is a string quartet score. So a couple of things to keep in mind. You've got a bunch of clefs going on. So your top two lines are in treble clef. Violas play in alto clef, and then your cello is in bass clef. And the other thing to keep in mind is there is a key signature, and that's going to apply to every note unless otherwise denotated by an accidental somewhere. So you've got to keep in mind then that your key signature is going to be in play the entire time. And in this instance, we have a key signature of 4 flats. So your flats then that you have to keep in mind are in order: B flat, E flat, A flat, and D flat. So with that then, what I asked everyone to do in class on Friday was identify all of the triads, so skipping the ones that are X'd out, with their root, their quality, and their inversion symbol. So let's review inversion symbols really quickly. So your root position triads will get the inversion symbol 5-3. And that's saying, you know how we stack triads in root position and they're all on lines or all on spaces. That's saying that from the root, you've got a third up, which is that next line, and then a fifth up, which is the line above that one. So that stacked snowman is actually giving you the third and the fifth up from the root. Now, a lot of times with root position triads, we don't even write the 5-3. It's assumed that a triad is in root position unless you say otherwise. Now, first inversion means the third is in the bass. So first inversion, which is third in the bass, we label as 6-3. So I'm going to write down here really quickly. So say we had an E major or C major triad, C, E, and G, and we took the C and we swung it up the octave. So we had E, the third was in the bass, and then G, and then C is above it. So this label, this 6-3 label, is because E to G is still a third. E, F, G, that's your third. E all the way up to C, E, F, G, A, B, C, that is a sixth. So the 6-3 comes from these two intervals that are above the bass. So when the third is in the bass, you get the interval of a third and the interval of a sixth above it. And that's why we have that label of 6-3. Now, in the same line of thinking then is second inversion, which means the fifth is in the bass. And we label that as a 6-4. So I'll go down here and write that out with that same C major triad. Now we're going to say that the G, which is the fifth of the triad, is in the bass. And we have the C and the E above that. So G to C, G, A, B, C. And you remember you count both of the boundary pitches too to find the interval. So you count the G and the C as you are figuring that out. So G, A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a fourth. And then G up to E, G, A, B, C, D, E gives us a sixth. Hence the label 6-4. So those are the 3 ways you can organize a triad. You're either going to have the root in the bass, the third in the bass, or the fifth in the bass. Those are the only options because there are only 3 pitches. So let's take a look at this very first harmony then. Your first step is figure out what notes you're dealing with. So I would go through then. I always like to build from the ground up. So I always start with the cello. So I'd look at the cello, figure out, okay, we're on the middle line, which is a D, but then I have to remember that I have a key signature in play. So it's a D flat. Then I'm going to look at the viola, which is in alto clef. So I have to remember that in alto clef, the pitch C is the middle line. So I've got to work down from there. And if I work down from that middle line, I'll find that my viola is on the pitch F. Now we're up to the second violin, which is now in treble clef. You've got 2 ledger lines to deal with. If you count your way down, you'll find that you have an A. But again, we do have that key signature, so it is A flat. And then last but not least, your first violin, right below the bottom line of the staff, also a D flat. So your first violin and treble are playing the same pitch. So even though you have 4 voices, you only have 3 different notes to worry about. So now you've taken an inventory of the pitches you're dealing with. You've got 3 distinct pitches, D flat, F, and A flat. Now your job is to figure out who the root of that triad is, which means you need to organize it in a way that it is sitting in stacked thirds, everybody on a line or everybody on a space. So one of the nice things about string quartet scores is they give you a lot of room to kind of write things. So one thing you can do is just jump to one of the voices and sketch out kind of your plan. So you've got this D flat in the cello. You've got an F in the viola. You have an A flat in your second violin. And just looking at that, we actually got lucky and we have this perfectly built root position triad without doing anything. So what that means is because they stack in thirds just as is, that tells us D flat is the root because it's the bottom of that stack. So we've got D flat as the root. Now we've got to work out the quality. So that's going to be maybe some half step counting. So on your keyboard, finding D flat and finding F. And if you do that, D flat up to F will give you 4 half steps. So it's a major third on the bottom. I'll write that up here. D flat to F, major third. And then you'll do the same thing, F to A flat. And that should give you 3 half steps, which is a minor third. So then you've got to remember back to the last video, what triad has a major third on the bottom and a minor third on top. And the answer to that is your major triad. So D flat major. And then because D flat is the root and is also the lowest voice, that means it's in root position. And so you can label it with a 5-3. More commonly, you're just going to see it just labeled as D flat major. We assume something's in root position unless you see otherwise. So most commonly, you're actually just going to see it labeled as D flat major, no figures at all. Okay, let's do the second one, the second measure, just to get a little bit more practice. So we're going to start out with the note naming as our first step. So let's go to the cello. Your cello is on C. Then you go to the viola, and you already did a lot of work in the last measure. So try not to reinvent the wheel. Refer back to what you did the last measure. So last measure, we found that the viola was on the bottom line, and that was an F. It's only moved down to the space right below that, right? So we don't have to work from the middle of the staff and count down from C. We know that this was an F. So that means that that is Looks like an E, but then again, remember that we have the key signature, so E flat. Your second violin hadn't done anything, so it's still on A flat. And then your first violin is again doubling one of the other voices. It's on an E flat. So once again, we have 4 voices, but only 3 distinct pitches. So our 3 pitches then, C, E flat, and A flat. So I'm going to, again, just write them out on the staff. So I've got a C, I've got an E flat, and I've got an A flat. Now, just by looking at it, I'm going to zoom in a little bit in case this is hard to see. Just by looking at that, you have 2 notes on spaces and 1 on a line. So the C and the E flat are on spaces. The A flat is on a line way above. The easiest way to get them all on spaces then is to move the A flat, right? So we're going to take this A flat and we're just going to swing it down the octave. So you're going to take that A flat, move it down the octave. And that gives us then a nice stacked third triad, right? Looks like a snowman, stacked thirds, it's in root position. That reveals to us then that A flat is the root of this triad. So we've got A flat as the root. Now let's work out the quality. So I'm going to write it over here. So you've got A flat to C, and then C to E flat. Don't forget your accidentals from the key signature. So A flat to C, if you do some half step counting on your keyboard, you're going to find that that is 4 half steps, which gives you a major third. And C to E flat, you'll find is 3 half steps. That gives you a minor third. So again, we have major third on the bottom, minor third on top, just like we had in the first measure, actually. So that tells us that we have another major triad. So we've got the root is A flat. The quality is major. Now I need the inversion symbol. Now we know we had to do a little extra work when we got here because A flat was not in the bass. So who is in the bass? By looking at the cello, which is the lowest voice, we know that C is our bass pitch. And by looking at how we spelled the triad down here, A flat is the root, C is the third. So our third is in the lowest voice. We've got C in the cello as the lowest voice. So I'm going to scoot over to the side here a little bit. Third in the bass, third in the lowest voice gives us our first inversion triad. And we label that as a 6-3. And you can even, if you wanted to like double check yourself, you could look at this blue triad that we have, that we originally wrote down. C to E flat is a third, and C to A flat is a 6th. So the way we even did our workspace shows that we have that third and the 6th, which leads us to this 6-3 label. So your first step, figure out what notes you're looking at. Figure out the note names for everything in the chord. Your second step, organize them to build them into a root position triad. So stacked thirds, because that will reveal to you who the root of the triad is. Then you look and see who's in the lowest voice. That will tell you the inversion. So a lot of times the root will be in the lowest voice like this first measure, but you will also get instances where it's not the root in the lowest voice. And then you've got to label it according to, is it the third in the bass, which means you have a 6-3, or is it a 5th in the bass, which means you would have a 6-4. So I crossed out these 3 harmonies here because they are not triads. We went through this in class and the notes are on Canvas, the fully annotated scores on Canvas. So if you want some practice, you could do this and then just double check with what I threw on Canvas and skip the 3 crossed out harmonies because they are not triads. And if you do decide to do that, you can go ahead and stop right here. We didn't do the very last harmony in class, so we just stopped after this one. Okay, sorry about the tuba sounds, and I'll see you tomorrow.